Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you very much for taking a seat for the last lap of this important race that we have led today. So thank you very much. I hope the lab you attended were as interesting as the one I attended. And what we will do now is have our four rapporteurs coming here on the podium to give us a very brief summary of what was discussed, the key topics, and the recommendation. And I would like to start with our colleague from Enable, with Jan Verschuren, who is our RTIA project manager. If you are here with us, excellent, excellent. Please join us.
Thank you, thank you. Actually, we're in a duo. I'm here with my colleague from Vleruwas. Please join me, otherwise I feel alone. So, and I'll let you start.
Okay, thank you. Jan and I attended Lab A, titled Education Under Fire, Learning Continuity and Recovery in a Context of Armed Conflict. And the lab focused on case studies from Gaza, West Bank, and Eastern DRC. And so several insights were shared from the presentation and discussions. Firstly, we heard practical examples of how education can continue in emergency context. Temporary learning spaces, or TLS, are important as they help ensure continuity. These spaces can be tents, can be repurposed buildings, or modular infrastructures. They provide children with a safe, trauma-informed environment where they can learn, but also heal and reconnect socially during conflict and displacement. Secondly, in situations of armed conflict, normal school operations are simply no longer possible. So, for example, education system must adapt to difficult realities, including shortening schedules to only 3 hours per day and limited to 3 sessions per week. A third key message concerned the role of the teachers. Teachers do far more than producing and transmitting knowledge. Social emotional learning, psychosocial healing, and mental health support are equally important components of education in crisis situations. And then lastly, particular attention was also drawn to the vulnerability of girls returning to schools after experiencing armed conflict or gender-based violence, and reintegration remains difficult because teachers and classmates often struggle to accept these girls back. So this underlines the need for inclusive approaches, awareness raising, and targeted support to ensure education remains accessible and protective to all children affected by conflict.
Thank you. Another crucial element that was highlighted throughout the three cases was the importance of coordination and collaboration of all various actors. Then we talk about government partners, international organizations, local NGOs, CSOs, etc. But also the importance of being networked and having the support and good communication lines with the local community. Also, what is important is the flexibility of each approach or each solution. There's a strong need to be able to adapt permanently. Sometimes you need to pause. Sometimes you need to relocate. So therefore, there's also a very close follow-up needed. So you can really adapt, let's say, every hour, every day, because it might be needed. And you also need strong train-the-trainer systems in relation to that as well. And then last but not least, very important, we should address more that education is life-saving. So funding, flexible funding should be prioritized also, or maybe definitely during conflict situations. So that's our summary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Jan. I would like to invite you, and I'm sorry, Hans de Greve, Hans de Greve from VVOB, the global, are you also a global proposal project developer? I am not sure. No,
I'm a global education advisor.
Very good. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so we have 5 takeaways from our session. Our session was around the link between foundational learning and stability, coming at it from 2 angles. So on the one hand, how can we ensure foundational learning happens in times of crisis, conflict, and fragility, but also what's the preventive role of foundational learning in terms of avoiding crisis, conflicts, and situations of fragility. First of all, maybe also good to mention that sadly, one of the keynote speakers was ill, so we had to miss part of that discussion, but I think we still had a very interesting discussion. We have 5 main takeaways. I think the first takeaway was that if we're talking about foundational learning in general, but especially in terms of crisis, conflict, and fragility, teachers are central. What teachers do is crucially important for the learning outcomes and the outcomes that you are going to achieve at the level of learners in general, but especially in terms of in times of fragility. What is important? The second takeaway actually is what is important that teachers do? Well, the takeaway there was that what happens in classroom needs to be at the level of where the learners are. So not necessarily on the grade that they should be in, or depending on the age that they are, but approaches that really focus on what learners are, that really focus on measuring at what level learners are and tailoring the pedagogical practice to that specific level, they work better, and they only work better if there is also two-way communication between a teacher and a student. So those are 2 very key factors in foundational learning in emergencies that need to be in place. So that was the second takeaway. The third takeaway I found very interesting is that the interventions that work best are interventions where things were already in place, where there were already trained teachers, where there were already materials available, where there are things available that you can then, in times of crisis, build on, work with, adapt. But if there's nothing in place or things are not yet in place, it becomes very difficult in a time of crisis to do something efficient. So that was the third thing, and I think it's important to keep in mind as well, if we're talking about working in humanitarian settings, that a lot of the work is actually already done before the crisis hits. So let's not forget about that. And the fourth one is, especially in terms of crisis and conflict, the need to balance, on the one hand, the need for speed. You want to come in and you want to make sure that things are rolling and that the children are back in school and that they are learning as soon as possible. But at the same time, you also need to think about the sustainability of the approach, making sure that local actors, governments are on board, so that when the crisis subsides, that they can continue and take over, and that the work doesn't stop there, and that it flows into the normal system again. And then the fifth one and the last one is that it's great to look at things that work, and there is evidence available around things that work in terms of foundational literacy, numeracy, and learning in times of crisis. But it's also very interesting to learn from things that don't work. But very often that evidence is not available. Organizations, governments are not always very eager to publish these kind of things that don't work, but we can learn a lot of things from things that don't work, and we should actually also make sure that information becomes available and transparent. So that was the key takeaways from our group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hans, for these important takeaways. I would like now to invite Serena Serbis, who is the chairwoman of the National Commission for Child Rights. Please come with us. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I had the privilege of serving as rapporteur for the Learning Lab D, with focused on classrooms as a safe space and the critical link between education and mental health and psychological support in crisis settings. We had, as introduction, the opportunity to discover how UNICEF is addressing the Gaza's education emergency. The 5 key messages emerged from the discussions. First, protracted crisis fundamentally reshape the challenge we face. We are no longer dealing with short-term emergencies, but with crises that last for years. In this context, children are not only missing out on education, they are facing continuous stress, displacement, and disruption of routines and relationships. This means that what we are facing is not only an education crisis, but a mental health and psychological crisis, psychosocial crisis at scale. Therefore, MHPSS cannot be treated as a temporary response. It must be embedded as a long-term structural system-level function. Second, message is MHPSS is crucial in education, for education. It's about brain development, emotions, cognition, social development, and social relationships. It is crucial in the 2 ways. It is crucial for education, but it can be also critical for education if we don't care of MHPSS. Third, education systems are uniquely positioned to deliver MHPSS at scale. In many crisis contexts, schools are one of the few remaining structures that provide continuity, stability, and social connections for children. They are not only places of learning, but protective environments where routines, relationships, and a sense of belonging can be rebuilt. We mentioned about this also the importance of teachers, and caregivers' mental health, that there are a lot of resources, and we saw a lot of resources available and inspiring examples for embedding MHPSS in education. And we mentioned also how it is important to embed MHPSS across education system components. It's really across the system. Fourth, impact depends on a truly multicultural, multi-sectoral, nexus-based approach. Education alone cannot address children's mental health. The responses require strong connections between actors and sectors working together toward shared outcomes. Finally, the cross-cutting message of our lab is scaling up requires deliberate system choices. It involves financing, investing in the education workforce, and support services. This lab's crucial message is MHPSS should not be seen as an add-on to education, but an essential condition for ensuring meaningful, safe, and continuous learning in time of crisis.
Thank you, Séverine. Now I would like to call Sandrine Bohan-Jacot, Inclusive Education Global Specialist for Handicap International. Please. Merci.
Good evening to all. Good end of afternoon. I'm sure you're very tired, but please bear with me a few more minutes. It's not an easy task to summarize what we share in the session with Lab C, Inclusion First, Rethinking Education for Peace and Stability. It's not easy for me because we're sitting here in a beautiful building with comfortable seats. We had wonderful food, we have coffee available, we have aircon. It's fantastic. and I was sharing this session with Mahan Altawil, who was with us remotely from Palestine, and his colleague Manal, knowing everything they're going through every day, the possibility that they might have to stop in the middle of the presentation, and I'm thinking of all my colleagues in Gaza as well. So as we were talking about inequity, here we are. We talk a lot about numbers in our session. One for me that's striking from UNESCO last Global Education Monitoring Report, we keep talking about children having poor condition of schooling, but there's actually 273 million of children and young people that are out of school today. So I'm thinking of them as the main inequality. Mahan shared a lot of numbers. They're hard to hear, but I want to repeat them again. 12,035 students killed, 19,379 students injured, 492 educational personnel killed, 2,603 injured, 95.2% of Gaza 564 schools building damaged. I could go on and on and on. The last one I heard is there are recent in February, 6,000 amputation recorded, 25% of whom on children. Those numbers are important, but even with those numbers, we can't even grasp the reality of what people are doing on the ground. These are not figures, these are people. Education still is the main request. We've heard it in several presentations this morning, and in Gaza, in the West Bank as well. And while we have the most documented genocide, scholasticide, ever on Earth, still people like associations like BISR and Humanity and Inclusion and many others are responding. And the community, what always strikes me is that community are already there responding. You know, teachers come unpaid, and still they're trying to provide an education. I think this is really key to understand this hope. Hope has come a lot of time. That's coming from education, the hope for a better future. And we've talked a lot about inclusive education because very often it's considered as nice to have if we have money, but we have other priorities. But in the session, we really promoted and we really believe that inclusion is a central pillar for peace because inequity and exclusion fuel conflicts. And it's now not a side issue anymore, conflicts. And we were also discussing that we're not responding to all the needs right now, and this inaction has a cost. I'm going to quote again that report from UNESCO. So the world could face over $10 trillion in losses by 2030 due to unmet educational needs. This encompasses, obviously, economic cost, but broader than that, it's social setbacks, including rising adolescent pregnancy, poor mental health, social fragmentation, higher crime rates. And currently, this report is also sharing there's only one country in 10 have an education financing approach that strongly prioritizes equity. Basically, most systems are not directing the resources to where they most needed. This should give us a pause because financing is not neutral. If it doesn't actively correct inequality, it will reproduce them. Education is also not a neutral place. It reproduces inequalities the same way, but it also holds a transformative power. And during the session, we had a lot of examples of how inclusion can make society safer and stronger because it's protective, because it brings social cohesion, because it's innovative, because it has quality I should stop with this word, instruction design. And it can really help to build a commitment to equity and safe and peaceful society because everyone has a place. And it's not just a wishful thinking from Sandrine. I think it's a reality. It is happening. We have seen concrete examples in our session. Manal and Mahan showed us several examples on how they're doing it today in Massa Feriata, in Jenin camp, and in Gaza. And I know it's done in many other places in the world. So my message is quite simple. Without equity, access will remain out of reach. We know that. And I think we have to be intentional now and redirect the funds where they are most needed. And I would really recommend to start with inclusion first, because if you can welcome all those population and diversity, you can definitely create a more peaceful society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sandrine, and thank you for reminding us all that beyond the figures, we are talking about little boys and little girls who deserve a future. And thanks, Jan, Hans, Séverine, for summarizing so brilliantly. I'm always amazed how you can summarize in 5 minutes, like 90 minutes of talk, which are extremely dense. So thank you very much for that. This brings us to the end. I mean, today's discussions and presentations, they have all reminded us how educational, humanitarian, and development actors can collaborate and in context of instability and conflicts. And I say can, but actually should or must, especially now, especially in a period of the world and our existence where all the principles of the Second World War and all the principles of multilateralism are put into questions. The recordings and presentation of the sessions will be made available to the learning labs as well as all the PowerPoint, etc. But before we move to the conclusion words, and you know, this morning I was highlighting how important it was to continue provide the youth and children a voice. So Laetitia, if you wouldn't mind coming with us on the stand-up, if you have also comments and remarks on today.
Thank you. So, sorry, a bit stressed. So, Catel Studio captured something yesterday that words alone cannot hold. So let me walk you through this visual, because every bubble, every word on this sketch note is a message, a recommendation, an urgent call. I'll start with Bohdan from Ukraine. He told us what happened when infrastructure collapses. Schools are destroyed, materials are gone. Sorry. And yet, people improvise. They become engineers of their own survival. Despite having no lights and internet connection, teaching happened. His recommendation is simple: collaborate. Ukraine and the EU have everything to learn from each other. Don't wait, start now. Mais from Palestine said something that silenced the room yesterday. Living under bombing day after day, she described the feeling of waking up with nothing to live for. And then she said, education was the only place we felt alive, even in those conditions, those terrible conditions. People graduate, people got PhDs online against all odds. Her recommendation: support education platforms and internet access, because humans need more than food. They need hope, and education is hope. Sylvia, from Belgium, carries a bittersweet feeling. She has seized every opportunity to engage the junior program and the youth sounding board from Enable, working for Plan International, and she sees progress. Young people are being consulted, but consultation without following up is not enough. There is a gap between being heard and being trusted. Her recommendation is integrate life skills into education, and beyond that, take a risk on young people. Trust them, not just at the table, but also during the decision-making process. Carmel said, In what state do children arrive at school in times of crisis? Resilience, she reminds us, is not built alone. You cannot tell a child who has lived through trauma to simply be resilient. The school must be a safe place for listening, a place of life, not just of learning. Her recommendation is embed mental health into education system, because a teacher who is supported can support a student, and a student who feels safe can learn. Keep hope in their hearts. Dr. Assaf left us with this. If you don't act, you leave it to the politicians to decide what meets their interests. Speak for those who don't have what you have. And finally, we had a slam writing session led by Ben Kamuntu and Nokabe that you all heard this morning. They are not merely artistic interludes, but powerful and meaningful contribution that amplifies youth perspective and underline the importance of engaging young people as active partners in shaping education for resilience, stability, and peace. To conclude, this sketch note is not a decoration, it's an evidence. Evidence that young people from Palestine, from Ukraine, from DRC, from the Sahel, from Belgium, yesterday sat together in this room and told the truth, their realities. Take this visual with you, share it, put it on the table, because the youth spoke, you've just listened, now it's your turn to act. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Laetitia. Thank you for those words of wisdom and, for sharing those voices of youth and teenagers. It's really important to us. Before we close, I would like to thank you all, to thank everyone here in Brussels, but also online, for the participation, the feedback, the engagement we had. I also want, on behalf of Educate, to thank Enabel for hosting us in this conference room and conference center. Also wanted to thank the Belgian government, EPFA, the VVOB, UNICEF Belgium, for making this event possible. Educate also wants to thank the member of organizations who have actively took part in this discussion, in the conference, the job, the partner speakers, all participants, and the interpreters who did an incredible job today, as well as our technical colleagues who allowed the smooth implementation and engagement of this conference. So thank you very much. I wish you a good end of the day. Thank you.